What is going on? This is the second episode on the channel, and I am thrilled to be joined by a celebrity. We have an A-lister in our midst. It is Brad Graham. You guys all know him, so there's no introduction needed. But for those of you who don't, it's Brad Graham from the SF Niners. It's an absolute pleasure to have Brad here, as normally he is the gracious host having me on his channel, so I'm honored to have him here. Brad, what is up?
Bro, I'm loving being on the other side of this, and I'm so glad that I'm on and we can talk more 49ers football, but it's cool to see Jordan be doing this thing, and it's cool being on the other side of it. I'm excited to see how this goes.
Right? This is like how, the whole how the turntables, like it's wild how it all plays out like that. Absolutely. So we have some stuff to talk about, man. Niners made a signing today. Jimmy Garoppolo's still on the team. There's still no, Jimmy Watch is in like week 3 now. We got a lot going on. So I figured we could start with, the hard-hitting content everybody wants to hear about. And that, of course, is Darqueze Dennard coming back on a 1-year deal. Do you have any thoughts on the 49ers bringing back another piece in the secondary who did, for what it's worth, play a pretty pivotal role in that must-win Week 18 game?
Exactly. I don't mind it at all because I know the talk has been around the lack of big-time moves, and rightfully so. But you also can't discredit the moves needed to build out a 90-man roster. So with the moves that they're making, Darqueze Dennard coming in today, if he's going to be a potential special team player, maybe a practice squad guy, and based on everything that I've seen from the players, they seem pretty excited to have him back. So seems like a solid locker room guy, and who knows what it could be, but depth is needed, and especially at the cornerback position. So I'm okay with it.
And, I don't like going too far back because at the end of the day, what you do in college doesn't always translate. But I do think there's a certain level of pedigree that you have to be a top player. And once upon a time, Dennard was one of the better defensive backs in the country coming out of Michigan State. I loved him, Brad, and I love doing draft stuff. So I always think if you can find, a slight bit of what made him so coveted in the beginning and generate some sort of fraction of that production at the cost you're getting him for, like, it's a net win, and it's a good depth piece. It's a veteran who's been in the league. And I just think that the 49ers are at a point where they can't really do too much to the secondary that I would be upset with. Like, the more that they're adding and the more aggressive they're being, I think is encouraging. I wanted to ask your opinion on the secondary. So I wrote something for Niners Nation earlier this week where I still think they have work to do at the slot corner position. And for those of you who don't know, there's been this narrative thrown around where I don't say narrative, but there's this idea getting thrown around that Emmanuel Moseley is going to kick inside on, sub packages. They'll have Ambry Thomas come in, and it'll be Thomas, Travarius Ward with Moseley kicking inside. I personally am not too big on that because I think that the way the NFL is going, you're going to be in that sub package defense more often than not, right? So to me, it's better to have that role be solidified. Like, if you were really that intent on kicking Moseley inside, have him be the full-time slot guy. Let him get all of his reps in the slot. Let him be the guy that's going to take on that role, especially when you're in a division with a guy like Cooper Kupp you're going to have to play twice a year, who we know just eats out of that role as a slot receiver. I'd much rather see that. On top of it, would rather see Ambry Thomas get locked into a consistent role where if he's going to be the guy they're going to develop, has fantastic traits, probably needs live reps to get better. That's a totally fair ask if you're coming from his point of view. I just think it makes way more sense to have solidified roles for these guys than this, kick inside on sub packages. Moseley starts outside when they're in the base 4-3. Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think that that's, crazy that I'm thinking maybe it's better to just lock them into specialized roles rather than, banking on flexibility?
I'm with you 100%. I mean, flexibility is awesome when it's not a detriment, but it feels like that particular scenario of kicking Moseley inside, you're playing him out of position in a sense. And although it might get you the 3 optimal cornerbacks that maybe you have on the roster on the field, is it the optimal decision to kind of play someone out of position and kind of deal with the repercussions that come along with it? I mean, I look at it at the situation as Travarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley being the 2 outside cornerbacks, and that's what it's going to be. And what is next is trying to figure out what that slot piece is going to look like. whether that is maybe Ambry is the one that they kick inside and they want to mold into a potential slot corner. Diamador Lenore, who knows how his maturation process is going to look like. But if we're talking about that nickel corner role, I want someone who's specialized, and that's all they're doing. Someone who's going to be extremely physical. I think that's why we loved K1. That's why we loved KK, is because although he was small in stature, the dude they call him the shark for a reason, because he was always hunting. He was very physical. He was able to play in the box. He was able to play around the line of scrimmage. He was able to cover in, the short to intermediate areas, when they asked him to. And he did well in that role. So I don't really look at Ambry. I think Mosley is a very physical cornerback. I don't really look at Ambry Thomas like that. So I look at the situation, stick Ward and Mosley on the outside, and figure out what you're going to do with that nickel corner position.
So I'm of the mindset where I think that the 49ers would be better off pursuing a veteran free agent. I think the signing they made when they brought in K1 Williams was arguably one of their better moves they've made in general. And that's talking all draft, free agency, trade. They've made a lot of good moves. It's a good team. But that one, just for the value and what they got out of a guy that wasn't really coveted the way he probably is now, and the way they developed him into that, impact player out of the slot, really proved to me that they value the impact that a player can have at that position with the modern evolution of the NFL, and how often these teams like the 49ers saw at least 3 receivers. So we're talking 3, 4, 5 wide receiver sets 73% of the time last season. So when teams are doing that, that's almost 3 out of every 4 snaps a team's going to be rolling out there with a minimum of 3 receivers. Yeah, when you have athletic freaks like Dre Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shaair and Fred Warner, sometimes you can get away with your base defense because those guys are really good at what they do. But you're getting put into a position where you're almost forced to roll out a 5th defensive back. And that's where, to me, I'm looking at this like once upon a time, we would have looked at the 3rd linebacker spot as a, important 11th man on the field as the starter. To me, that slot corner position has eclipsed that 3rd linebacker spot for this 4-3 defense. And it's so pivotal to have a guy that you can count on, like a K1 Williams, who's a veteran, who's going to understand the scheme, situation, has been there, done that. And to me, there's 2 guys that I really look at who are available now. Bryce Callahan, who, funny enough, played for the Broncos. And how funny would it be if the 49ers signed Callahan, the Broncos signed K1? It's almost like they're trading without, any compensation going back and forth. And the other was Chris Harris, Jr., who many probably remember was a big part of the Broncos Super Bowl run a few years ago, played for the Chargers last season. There were some really interesting numbers for me with Chris Harris. Chris Harris was ranked 3rd in yards allowed per target, and he was ranked 4th in targets allowed per snap. So, snaps per target. So that basically means when he was getting targeted, he wasn't giving up very many yards, and he wasn't getting targeted very often, which to me indicates that he's a guy that teams weren't really eager to throw after. And the little bit of the time I've had to go back and watch film, Callahan and Harris to me look like guys who I think could step in right away from day one. Sure, it's probably going to cost a little bit of money. You might have to pay him $4.5, $5 million a year, maybe on a 2-year deal. But the solidification you get from that secondary, adding a guy like Ward, having a guy like Mosley, having Jimmy Ward, who's already there, to me, it takes something that I never thought was a complete weakness, but it takes something that was a definite talking point and a question mark for some. And you go from it being a concern to a legitimate, I think that's a top 10 unit in the league. And that's before they even address the safety position. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about some veteran guys, or if you're more inclined for them to go look and find somebody in the draft. I just think when it comes to secondary stuff, I want a guy who can come in from day one, veteran, been there, done that, don't have time to sit here and develop a guy that's going to need those reps from day one. And I just think that's a more prudent move. Do you have any thoughts?
I am 100% with you in going to the veteran well. I think if there's anything that I learned from last year, and what I've known from the draft process of scouting cornerbacks, I feel like it's one of the most volatile positions to scout. Again, you can have top level guys going top 10, top 15 in this class, complete lockdown, and just bust out of the league with, it feels like, more almost certainty than any other position, or at least uncertainty, however you want to look at it. So if you want someone to come in and be an impact right away, I'm with you. Go to the veteran well. And you listed two extremely solid veterans that could come in and be a contribute day one. I like Chris Harris Jr. I think he could be a guy that slots into that role. And you look at the available free agent market in the slot cornerback position, there's not a lot of guys left. Everyone's getting snatched up. You're looking at guys like Robert Alford, like, do you want him to potentially come in, play that role? There's not a lot of guys left out there. So, but I'm with you. I would much rather turn to someone that has the experience in the league, the crafty veterans that know how to manipulate and do things maybe with their mind. They maybe lost a step or two, but we've seen cornerbacks come into the league that have that type of cerebral awareness that they can make up for some of those situations. So I agree. I think it would be a situation where you look for a starter in free agency and you look for more additional depth in the draft.
I agree. I think this is a great question from Peyton too, because I know Brad's a big fan of Diamador's. I liked him a lot coming out. We spent a lot of time last year talking about him. My concern would lie in the fact that with either him or Thomas, like, you're banking on them developing, which I don't think is a terrible move considering the track record the 49ers have and the fact that those players have both shown flashes of being good. I just don't get the same reassurance I would from a veteran. And that's nothing. It's not an indictment on the individual player. It's more so just from a team building standpoint. I think that they can afford, they have a couple moves they have to make, and we'll get to that in a second, but they have a couple moves that if they make, they have far beyond the needed flexibility to bring in a couple veteran guys. And to me, the worst case scenario, if you do that, is, hey, we paid $4 million to have Chris Harris come in, and Diamador Lenore and Ambry Thomas are so good that they're now jumping this guy on the depth chart. And you're really looking at a situation where your biggest issue is that you have too many good cornerbacks. And if you told any 49ers fan that their biggest problem is that they have too many good defensive backs, I think most would be pretty okay with that. So sure, it might be able to happen, but I do think that, again, playing slot is really difficult because I think, especially if they are more inclined to play a little bit more press man, you don't have the sidelines to help you out. You're out there on an island and you don't have that luxury of, working with the leverage of having a sideline to either side of you. So I always see the argument thrown around like, well, there's safety help over the top, there's linebackers. That's true. But at the same time, it's much more difficult than I think people give credit for playing slot corner. And that's why you see a lot of, like, if you go back and you look at the snap counts of the cornerbacks playing the most in the slot last year, guys like Jalen Ramsey are amongst the top because they realize the value, defensive coordinators being that, moving these guys into the slot, it's very difficult to do. And especially with how often these offenses are going to do that. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on Demo, but that's kind of what would make me hesitate. Not Demo, the player, more so just the lens of, like, a veteran would give me much more reassurance than a player coming into year two.
Same exact feeling. I would just feel better about it because, unfortunately, although we saw signs of Diamador Lenore being a player in training camp, it didn't transfer into the season. So that gives you a little bit of pause. Can he turn into someone? Of course he can. But going into this year, if we look at last year for reference, what did we talk about day one of training camp? The depth in the defensive back rooms, whether it was safety or cornerback, was something that you could see right away. And I don't think they want to go do that situation again because they had to rely on the Josh Normans and, the Drake Kirkpatricks at that certain point because they didn't address it soon enough into training camp, into free agency. I think they kind of went and were like, well, we got two rookies in the draft. We'll be okay. One of them hopefully will turn into someone and we won't have too many injuries. Well, injuries came knocking and they didn't want to put Ambry in. They were forced to play Ambry, and it was ugly to begin with. Thankfully, kind of picked it up, but he still leaves a little bit to be desired in the overall grand scheme of things. So I would feel much more comfortable if they not only drafted more cornerbacks, but also to brought in one or two more veterans, and they brought in a veteran today.
And this is the thing too, right? Like, we always talk about, like, quarterback windows, right? And, like, going all in on the Trey Lance window and the rookie window and how do we align a rookie quarterback and developing him with a, contending roster. But that applies to every other position too. Like, if you're out there and you have a team that's 3 points away from being in a Super Bowl, you don't really have the luxury of letting a guy take his lumps week in and week out at a position like cornerback in the modern NFL, where teams are throwing the amount that they're throwing and they're going out in these spread offenses and everything's out in space. Like it just feels like it's a situation where, to me, I'd much rather spend the money and invite the competition where, hey, if the young guy with the traits jumps the veteran on the depth chart, great. We're cooking with house money at that point.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't like the idea of going into this season and going into training camp, and then if those guys don't develop and they don't take the step they need, which again, playing in the NFL is very hard. Like I think so often people are so quick to just be like, oh, this player sucks or he's not good. Dude, playing in the NFL is really hard. And especially if you are a guy like an Ambry Thomas who didn't play for a whole year and you have to kind of catch up to not only the speed of the NFL game, but you haven't been playing game speed at any level for a year. So I just think a veteran's their best bet, but it doesn't mean that I'm sitting here saying that the guys they have are terrible and can't get it done. I just think, again, it's more of like for the Warriors fans out there, it's a strength in numbers thing. And I just think that would be a very good approach.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the strength in numbers approach would be something that the 49ers should absolutely be looking at, especially with the defensive back situation.
Yeah, my apologies. I don't know how I got dragged out of here. I don't
trust me. I know you've been in that opposite situation with me.
And the shoes are big to fill when you're the one who leaves.
Yeah,
dude,
I know. You're just like, oh boy.
I'm like, I'm not Brad. How do I, what do I do? I know Steph asked about Jaquan Brisker. I think he's fantastic. I wish I could give you more insight, but to be honest with you, I don't think he's going to be there when the 49ers have a chance to pick. I think he's an early second round pick at the latest. He is very good football player. I don't know if Brad wants to speak on it real quick. I think he'd be fantastic, Steph. Great eye. I know you're out there grinding tape doing draft stuff. Brisker's great. I just think, unfortunately, he's a bit too great for where the 49ers are sitting at 61. And I would be if he's there, sprint to the podium, John Lynch. Sprint to that podium and you turn in that draft card.
I feel the same way. He's going to be a guy that is going to be in high regard, especially to play on that back end of a defense. The Penn State, man, they just breed him different on the defensive side of the football over there. I mean, of course, you have Ebiketie over there, an edge who could be a potential target for the 49ers. But I agree with the sentiment on Brisker. I think he's one of these guys that's going to be, hey, if the 49ers want a chance, they might have to move up a little bit. And I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to stick at 61 either. I think they could move up, and I think they should move up, to be honest.
So let's talk about that real quick, because I think a lot of people, as much as it's a polarizing topic, are getting kind of sick of hearing about, is Jimmy on the roster or they're free agents, this or that. Like, there's a lot of people, I think, who are eager to hear about the draft and what the 49ers might do. Where are you standing currently? Like, where do you think they're going to go with that first pick? Do you think they have just like like best player available? For those who don't know, when we say BPA, it's best player available. Do you think it's a BPA approach, or do you think it's more so like, hey, we have holes here and here, we're looking to upgrade there? Like, if you're GM Brad Lynch and you're putting on your 49ers pin on your lapel and going up to that draft podium, who are you taking at 61? Or are you moving up, just like you mentioned? What's your strategy?
I would definitely be looking to move up. Again, understanding the draft capital that I have and kind of the back end, understanding I'm still hunting for that edge. Again, Jordan, you're the one who put me on Azeez Ojulari last year, and he proved to be a phenomenal player in the NFL on his rookie season with the Giants. So with the 49ers, if I'm the GM, I'm going trenches. I'm going best player available, whether it's defensive line or offensive line, and I'm sticking there because this class is so loaded at those two positions. I would assume you're going to have the best opportunity to get the highest caliber player in a position of need. You need O-line and you need defensive line. We understand with Chris Korsek, he's going to need bodies. He likes to throw waves at you, so you'll never have enough defensive line with this group. So if it was up to me, I would be trying to identify a potential target that I would like to go move up and get. But if I don't do that and we stay pat, I'm going best player available in the trenches.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I know people are talking about who they'd like. I see in the comments, there's a lot of guys who really did stand out. I just, unfortunately, like Boya Mafe was a guy Brad and I talked a bunch about at the combine. I think he ends up going in the first round. Honestly, he's going to be a really good player.
His stock went Woo!
to the
Talk
moon.
about stomps, baby.
Ebiketti's the same kind of mold for me, where he's just a guy where I think a team's going to see those physical traits and they're going to be like, hey, if we get him in the building, we'll fine tune some of the stuff where he may still be a little bit raw. But I see like two above average, really good players. A name that got floated around a bit, but people kind of soured on because of his weigh-in at the combine was Myjai Sanders. For what it's worth, he did weigh in, I believe, at 248 at his pro day. So he had dropped down from 242 to 227, and it's really hard to get excited, I understand, about an edge rusher weighing in at 227 pounds. He did have an illness he was dealing with. Yeah. So now that he's back up, that was only a couple of weeks ago. He's back up to 248, was able to put that weight back on. He's another guy where I think he profiles really well into that speed rusher, 9-tech role. You could put him opposite of Nick Bosa, getting into a rotation with a guy like Ebukam out there on the edge opposite Bosa, and just really get that kind of what, to me, it feels like the 49ers have lacked since D Ford got hurt, is just having a guy opposite Nick Bosa that just has that natural bend and that natural ability to just slip under tackles with a speed rush. I do think they've done a great job with the guys who have been there. They're just winning in different ways. But I think there's such a clear formula with getting that. That's why I really liked Azeez Ojulari last year, because he not only had the hand technique and the chop and all the stuff he was doing with his hands and his technique, he just had this natural bend that I think genuinely it's something you either have or you don't. Like, you can spend hours upon hours training and in the gym. Some of these guys just have traits that it's just, you're born with it. And I think the 49ers would be taken to the next level if they're able to get a guy on a rookie deal to put opposite of Nick Bosa that can have that natural bend and that speed to get off and really put teams in a bind. Because guess what? If you start paying too much attention one way or the other on the edges, then you have to worry about Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw and these guys rushing from the interior as well. I'm big on Kevin Givens. I think he's going to have a really big year. I loved the Hassan Ridgeway signing. Like, this defensive line is really deep. So I understand where people might be thinking, why we need to go somewhere else. We need a corner. We need a safety. We need a receiver, all these other spots. But to me, that's been the 49ers engine that's driven them on this path of success they've had 2 of the last 3 years. If you go to 2019 and you go to 2021, to me, what's really driven them has been that defensive line, that deep rotation where you're just constantly harassing quarterbacks. And, that's not to say they've done it all on their own, but if you look at the pattern, like when things really started to heat up for them towards the back stretch of this past season, it was really when they kicked Arden Key inside. Eric Armstead started playing more 3-tech, and Samson Ebukam took that leap after getting comfortable playing a position he never really had played before at the NFL level. So I just think it's kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it type scenario, where it's like, hey, if you just keep pooling resources into that defensive line, in my opinion, you're going to end up having at least a chance to compete. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that people want a Super Bowl every year. If you're just a competitive team year in and year out, like we just saw it, nobody was picking the 49ers outside of the fan base for them to, make a Super Bowl run when they were going into Dallas in the wild card round. But they had a defensive line, and we know with Kyle Shanahan, they'll be able to run the ball. So I just think defensive line is where I'm at with that. I think if they can get an edge guy, I think they're pretty set on the interior, but if they can get an edge guy with that natural bend and that ability where maybe year one, they're still, adapting, kind of sprinkle them in a little bit, but hey, you give Chris Kosarek somebody with a crumb of ability, and he's going to turn them into a Pro Bowler. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I wanted to transition that more towards like, who's out there in free agency. Like, I still think there's moves to be made. I think all the big splashy signings have pretty much subsided. There's still a few guys out there who will get decent money, but is there somebody out there for the 49ers that you're looking at other than Brian Burns? I know you really want Brian Burns, Brad, but other than Brian Burns, somebody who's actually a free agent and isn't, under contract with another team. Is there somebody out there that you're looking at where you're like, I need this guy in the red and gold? This is somebody that's going to be a difference maker that might help put them over the top next year.
First of all, today was one of the greatest days in channel history because I got to openly talk about Brian Burns in a hypothetical situation for like an hour and a half. And I was the happiest person in the world. The chances of Brian Burns actually coming on over to the San Francisco 49ers is very slim, but it's something that I like to dream about. But that is kind of exactly what I'm looking for in regards to archetype, player archetype traits. You mentioned the speed. You can go back and you can chart out when D Ford was on the field in 2019, the success rate in which that defense had with the speed coming off the edge, which was set by D Ford, and forced quarterbacks off the spot consistently. I've been trying to replicate that. That's why when you showed me Azeez Ojulari last year, I think it was like in January, I was like, who is this guy? And we got really excited about it because for all the things that you've mentioned, you know, the bend was there, the speed, the moves, his hands. I loved his hands. I loved the natural ability that he had to work his hands for a guy in college who you knew was going to continue to ascend. He was someone that I really liked. In regards to like looking into free agency, did Dante Fowler get signed? He
went to Dallas, unfortunately.
Which
is hilarious because that's very similar to the defense the 49ers running. Sorry, go ahead. I just was throwing that out there. So for all the talk about like, I thought it was a great scheme fit and it was funny. I had people telling me that, oh, he can't do that. He's a stand-up 3-4 backer. Well, guess what? He's playing for Dan Quinn, and that's not at all what Dan Quinn does. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Brad. I
was just going to say, like, one of the best fits that's out right now is Arden Key. But hey, I does not look like Arden Key will be returning to the San Francisco 49ers. I imagine Arden's trying to get paid, and rightfully so. And it's clear that the 49ers are adding Kerry Hyder for very cheap deals, bringing back Jordan Willis, bringing back those types of kind of depth pieces at the moment, where it appears Arden Key is looking to get a little bit richer of a deal. Looking at the kind of available people, there's no one that I'm really seeing is what I'm trying to say. I would say that the edge market that, you know, for the traits that I'm looking for, it looks like it's kind of tapped out, unless maybe there's a gem I'm just kind of skipping over. But I think there's so much edge talent in this draft that I'm looking to go to the draft here. Personally.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there. Really quick, this is like a knife directly to my heart because those were my two favorite players in the draft, and I spent so much time talking about them both. And I thought the Niners were going to take Moehrig twice in that second round, and they traded back and then drafted Aaron Banks. So I don't
Jordan put me on to both of these guys, and I'm on the same hype train with them.
I don't want to cry on stream, so I'm going to move on. But you're right, Eric. I agree. So this is my whole thing. Like, if they really wanted to splurge on an edge, and I don't see it happening because I think this player is going to get broken off and paid, and it's a name where people might just immediately like tune out, like cue the like picture of the guy ripping his headphones off. Like, I think it's Jadeveon Clowney still. I think Jadeveon Clowney is a guy where you have to be comfortable knowing that his injury history isn't great. At times, it doesn't look like the motor's 100% there, but when it is, he's a game-wrecking force, and he's coming off of a season where he had some sites have him listed at 9, some have him at 11. I'm going to call it even. I'm going to say he had 10 sacks last year, right? He had double-digit sacks. Everybody, that was always the knock on him. He couldn't have a double-digit sack season. The production was there, but if you just go and you watch the tape and you watch the havoc that this guy wreaks on opposing tackles and his ability to do what Arden Key did, kick inside and work against guards. And then on top of it, he's one of the best run defenders in the entire league in terms of defensive linemen. To me, that is like the ideal. Like, if I'm looking at like the ideal person to put opposite of Nick Bosa, it's Jadeveon Clowney. The problem is, I think he's going to get double digit, he's going to get upward, $10+ million a year. And I don't think that he's in a position. I thought last year was maybe the year the 49ers could kind of convince him to come in and take a, market friendly deal and do kind of what Arden Key did this past year, where you come in, you boost your numbers, you show you're a guy that still has it. So that's the one name that I'm really looking at in terms of like edge. But I agree. I think like defensive line, they're much better off. Niner by Nature said it too. Like, there's so many guys you can get in the draft. And I just think that the line is so deep that, like, this is my thinking, right? Let's say you played offensive line, Brad. You're going up against Nick Bosa, right? You have 15 reps in a game. You're going up against Nick Bosa, and you're working your tail off because Nick Bosa is one of the best edge rushers in football. Nick Bosa goes to the bench.
Cooking me at that point.
Yeah. Exactly. So Nick Bosa goes to the bench, right, to take a breather. You're still out on the field. Bring in Charles Menahue. Bring in Jordan Willis. No disrespect to those players. They're not Nick Bosa. But at the end of the day, they are feeding off the advantage of they're working against an offensive line that's worn down and tired. And I think that's where you get these guys that do, like, the Niners clearly have a mold they're looking for with these Jordan Willis, Charles Omenihu, like these pickups they're making for late 6th round pick, 7th round pick swaps, all these, they're not worthless commodities, but they're pretty much, like, hey, you can throw darts with those picks. It's not a huge deal. It's not like you're moving your first, day in 1 and 2 picks. To me, that is much more of like a strategy that's going to provide you continuity and longevity, is just kind of banking on the fact that, hey, if an offensive line, they don't get to rotate guys in and out, they're going to get worn down blocking Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, and Nick Bosa. So if we're able to rotate in these guys who have the plus physical traits and are coming in fresh, because that's what you started to see last offseason. Was you saw the Arden Keys and the Ebukoms. We saw Omenihu. He was working Tyron Smith, who's one of the better tackles in the league, even though he's getting up there. So to me personally, I think that strategy of kind of finding an archetype of physical traits you look for, and then supplementing the superstars in, Nick Bosa and the really good above average. Like, I think Eric Armstead's a star player. A lot of people probably disagree with that, but supplementing your high-end players like that with just physical rotational guys that can come in and are hungry and are able to feed, like, have fresh legs. Like, it really is. I think sometimes we overcomplicate this stuff and we just want to have the superstar defensive line, but you don't need that. And that's the biggest thing for me, is it's like, hey, if you can get that guy in the draft, like, great. So I'm with you on that. I'm wondering where they go with the offensive line. And this is kind of your area of expertise. Not kind of, this is your area of expertise. I like Daniel Brunskill. I know you really like Daniel Brunskill. Are you okay with them just kind of, Trent Williams, we know, is locked into a spot. The left guard spot's kind of up in the air. I think we're both under the assumption that they probably give Aaron Banks first dibs at filling in that spot. That's where he played in college. And I think that there's not really a clear suitor for that role at the moment. Mack might come back, might not. Brunskill's tendered. Like, are you comfortable pretty much with where the offensive line is at, or do you have concerns as somebody who is a offensive line guru? Because if we're going to talk about the defensive line trenches, the big guys on the other side need some love. Where are you at with the state of the 49ers offensive line? Are you comfortable, concerned? Like,
I'm pretty concerned, to be honest. And I've stated this quite a bit. I'm still waiting for the definitive language around Alex Mack for me to feel comfortable about that. Until that comes out, I'll be a little bit on edge. Regardless, the 49ers still have to draft a center anyways. So it's going to be interesting to see if that becomes a situation, because clearly if Alex Mack doesn't return, then you have the opportunity to shift Brunskill to center if you need to. I wouldn't want to do that. But that becomes a potential option. I'm okay with the depth. I like the Colton McKivitz return. I like that they brought him back. He turned out to be an insanely huge piece week 18 against the Rams to get the 49ers into the playoffs. He came in and had a spot start at left tackle for Trent Williams, and that gave me a big vote of confidence. I know they like him in that locker room, and they're really surprised when he didn't make the initial 53-man roster. Justin School's coming back, and he is progressing really well from everything that I've heard. He's kick-stepping again. He's working technique outside of just rehabbing, so he's on pace to be back, and he's been able to spot start for the 49ers a couple times. They brought back Jake Brendel, so they have the kind of depth ancillary pieces, and of course Aaron Banks, I think, is still a question. We got to see him play. So it's hard to give a definitive answer on that. But in regards to the overall kind of level of what the 49ers have at offensive line, I'm a bit concerned.
And is that something for you where is that like rising up your priority list? Like, are you, like, let's say right now the 49ers are in a spot where there's an edge rusher that looks really good, but are you superseding that, I don't say luxury pick, because you can never have too many good defensive linemen, but are you looking at a spot where it's like, hey, I can't afford to not take this O-line guy here at 61, or if there's a guy, 55, where it's like, maybe we can trade up and get a guy we didn't think would fall this low? Is it so much of a concern to you that you're like, everything else is kind of on the back burner? We need to address this and make sure that Trey Lance has solidified offensive line in front of him?
If Alex Mack does come down that like maybe he is calling it quits, the 49ers need to do everything they can to likely trade up and get Cam Jurgens. Like literally. Like I think in NFL circles, Cam Jurgens is going to be the kind of guy that is much higher than the media has him, because of course it's offensive line. It's hard to quantify because there's no stats or really anything to compare players to. So if that was the case, like I'm doing everything I can to ensure Cam Jurgens is on the San Francisco 49ers before it's all said and done. But you can I think there's enough depth at interior offensive line and also enough depth at edge where you can, as long as you're going like interior offensive line edge or edge interior offensive line, I think there's a way that you can go BPA with the trenches. If that's Cam Jurgens early and you take him, great. You can turn around and get my guy D'Angelo Malone late, who is a pure speed rusher, and you can be able to try to piece those things together, kind of like what you were talking about, finding the archetype, finding the traits. Doesn't have to be a 3 down every play in, play out type of guy. If you can, because that needs to be the center. Like, you need to be able to find a guy that can play on the O-line, play in and play out, and potentially have an impact as a rookie. I'm looking to try to maximize my offensive line first if there are that many legitimate holes on the offensive line. And it's going to be interesting because the 49ers haven't prioritized offensive line through the draft in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's tenure. They drafted, of course, Mike McGlinchey, but that was a lateral move. They had Trent Brown on the roster. They were moving off of Trent Brown, so drafting Mike McGlinchey was a replacement of Trent Brown. Other than that, they took Colton McKivitz late. They took Justin School late, and that's all they had drafted until Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore came around. So they don't have an extensive history of spending on draft capital on offensive line. And the time they went high, they've taken McGlinchey and Aaron Banks, both guys that have questions on them. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they attack this, because there are legitimate concerns with the offensive line, and there aren't any offensive linemen that are like, I think JC Treader is available and he could be a good fit. But there's not a lot of guys out there that are veterans that could step in right away.
Yeah, and it's hard when you play center too. Like, it's so important in that offense, and you can't just have like anybody fill it. I think we saw, when they asked Dan Brunskill to play 17 positions in 2020 and basically do everything. And Hronis Grasu, sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. It's been a while since I've had to say that name. There was a couple questions about McGlinchey too. I know Chris asked about it, and I saw Jesus asked about it too. So Brad and I are both, I don't want to speak for him, but we're both Mike McGlinchey guys. Like, we both think that there's more value in Mike McGlinchey than I think he gets credit for. The biggest thing with him is just, how's he going to respond to this injury? Because if he's coming back off a season where he's completely healthy, I have no concerns about Mike McGlinchey. Sure, there's some, hey, he's making a good amount of money on a 5th-year option. You start to get into numbers when you're talking contract extension and all that. But for the player, I think he's much better than he's given credit for. And I thought he actually was, his concern was that it wasn't necessarily pass protection. People just blanket it as pass protection. I don't think he had an issue with pass protection as much as he had an issue just in some high leverage situations. And that's where it got magnified. And Brad can tell you, as somebody who's played the position, you can have 35 reps as an offensive lineman, right? Let's say your team's dropping back 35 times in the game. If you are solid, locking up the guy trying to rush the passer opposite you, and you're just great fundamentals, great technique, everything on 31, 32 of those 35 reps, it doesn't matter, because all anybody's ever going to talk about are the 3 you got beat on. And it felt like in McGlinchey's case, a couple of those came on like a 4th down or in the 4th quarter, or during a 2-minute drill. So I think this perception of him gets skewed, where I understand like certain moments are more valuable than others, but at the same time too, to me, if you're fairly evaluating a player, you have to take the full 60 minutes into account. So if they can get back the Mike McGlinchey we saw before, and especially the McGlinchey we saw before he got hurt this year, where I thought he did take a step forward in those bigger moments, and he did look like he had a little bit of weight added and was more of an anchor in pass protection, I'm happy to ride it out. And if he plays so well, you have to pay him a bunch of money. Like, that's a great problem to let future John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan worry about a year from now. Like, that's not something I'm overly concerned with. It's more so just he has a serious injury that, a good amount of players never fully recover from. So we really don't know what to get from him. So that's kind of my stance on it. I don't know if you want to add to that at all, Brad, where you're out with McGlinchey. Like, I don't have an issue with Mike, the player, at all. I just am concerned that, ruptured quad tendon is a very serious injury that a lot of guys are just never really the same after.
Yeah, and we don't know if that means he'll be available in OTAs, if that means he'll be available in training camp, and that could be a concern. And one of the biggest things with having a successful offensive line is continuity, and you have to have someone in there that can step in and play the role for Mike if he's not in there, that you can feel comfortable switching in and out. Because just like we saw when they put Jalen Moore at right tackle with Brunskill, the continuity was not there, to the point where they just had to take Jalen Moore out and they put Tom Compton in as a result. I think they wanted Jalen Moore to take over the right tackle role, but he couldn't do it. There was no continuity there. Him and Brunskill did not practice all of training camp because, as you and I know, Trent Williams, they brought him along slowly, which meant Jalen Moore was the de facto starting left tackle for the most of training camp and preseason. And so he got all his reps on the left side. When they tried to stick him over to the right side, it was a disaster. And a lot of that comes with the continuity. And so I'm the same boat. I think a healthy Mike McGlinchey is not a problem. You can be successful with a healthy Mike McGlinchey. We just don't know. That's just where we're at. We just don't know what the rebound looks like. I've never seen this injury on an offensive lineman before, so I don't have a baseline experience dealing with it before. So it's all new for me as well.
So Tony, what's going on, Tony? I wanted to get his question out here for you. He's asking how you think this O-line class measures up. And Brad got a front row view of this offensive line class, moving and grooving out there at the combine. It was much more entertaining than you'd expect. Just real quick, for whatever my 2 cents are worth, they were moving, dude. I've never seen a group of offensive linemen move like that one. So I'll let Brad take it over. He's the expert, but it was much more fun than I expected watching O-line drills at a scouting combine.
It's one of my favorite O-line classes that I've had, and I've been paying attention and scouting guys for about 10 years now, for what it's worth. And in my time, I'm not sure I've seen a class this deep at center, at guard, at tackle. Like it's a really fun class. I thought last year's class was a good class too. I think this year's class is you're going to be able to find a legitimate starting center, legitimate starting guard, and a tackle, maybe in the second or third round. So I think it's a great year for the 49ers to, take that dive into that pool again. I know it might not have worked out how they have hoped last year, but don't stop swinging just because you may have missed on one before.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too, is that, at a certain point, it's a numbers game. And if you hit on half your picks, that's a win. And the more picks you have, the more ammunition you have to just kind of throw darts at the dartboard. And, it's more of, an exact science in that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like they're just like, blindfolded picking names out of a hat. But at the same time, like, you can't go into every draft thinking you're going to nail every pick. And I feel like that's like this unrealistic expectation. Like, to me, if you pull 2 or 3, like, impact, they don't even have to be starters. Like, if you can pull a starter or 2 and then like a depth piece that's getting a considerable amount of snaps, that's a good draft in my book. Even if you have 10, 12 picks, it doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, it comes down to a numbers thing. So speaking of numbers, we're coming up on 45 minutes. I didn't want to keep Brad too long, and I didn't want this to run a crazy amount of time. So for a couple of minutes, if you guys have any like specific questions you want to ask Brad or myself, I wanted to turn it over to you guys watching. I appreciate everybody who's here. For those of you who don't know, this is the second episode I've done on this channel. I'm going to try to start doing content more frequently. So any support in getting, the channel shared, anybody, who might be into 49er stuff, any subscriptions and likes and all that stuff are greatly appreciated. So really quick, if you guys have any questions, I'll try to get to a few now. Again, I don't want to keep Brad too long, but I also want you guys to, be a part of this. This wouldn't be as fun if we didn't include everybody. So I think I see one, from Justin. I don't know if you want to take that.
I feel like one of the top tier guys would have to fall to 61 and or the 49ers would have to trade up. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think Lewis Sign out of Georgia, he's a guy that I really like. Shades of a little bit of Deshaun Goldson in there. I think if you, or a Brisker, like we talked about earlier, if you identified, that Odom is a true special teamer, and that's what the role you want him for, and you want to go in and get a starter day one, I think you're going to have to trade up for that guy. Now, I think there are mid-tier safeties available as well. There's two guys that I freaking love in this class, and it's Kirby Joseph out of Illinois and Brian Cook out of Cincinnati. I think both of those two guys, you could maybe get them in the second or third, and I think they both could be starting caliber safeties. Now, they might not have the pedigree as some of these kind of blue chipper safeties that we're seeing out there, but I think there's quality depth that you can find at safety. So it's going to be interesting because it is a major hole. If Odom isn't going to be a starter, that's a hole that needs to be filled. So I think safety's up there with O-line and edge. It's just figuring out how to fill all those holes and how to assign the value as well. So I could see it. I could see them moving up, maybe falling in love with someone and being like, that's our guy. We're going to go get him. We can go get my boy Donovan West in the third round. We can go get Abraham Lucas out of Washington in the third round or fourth round, whichever one of those picks they have, and they can address it in different ways. So there's guys. It's just how you want to fill out those positional needs, I guess. So it would be interesting. I'm interested to know your thoughts.
I think that it depends on how the board goes. The guy to me that I think would be the best replacement for what Tart does is Leon O'Neal. I think that he's the guy that not only what he does on the field, but his attitude off of it was infectious. It made me sit there and go, if he's having, half this amount of energy and charisma in meetings, like these teams are going to end up falling in love with the guy. And there was a ton made about he ran like a 4.63 40. Cam Chancellor ran 4.62. He was a pretty good player. Kenny Vaccaro ran a 4.63. Deshaun Goldson ran a 4.65, if I remember correctly. Like, there's plenty of players. Like, to me, I don't care about 40 times. I care about what you look like when you have a helmet and pads on. It really doesn't matter to me how fast you run in a straight line.
Exactly. Because if you don't have the instincts, like your instincts can take you to the ball before it even gets there.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. And what I saw from Leon O'Neal watching film is that, I haven't watched every snap he's played, but the handful of games I've been able to watch was I saw a guy who consistently was sniffing out plays before they fully developed and getting to spots before the ball carrier, and just somebody who played with a tremendous amount of IQ. And I like people that want to be great and they don't make it, they're not shy about letting you know how much work they're willing to put in and then backing it up with their actions. And I'll tell like a quick story. It's easy for anybody to say, oh, I'm going to put in the time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. We were at the combine on the last day on Sunday. Leon and a few other defensive backs stayed on the field working on short. I think they were doing short shuttle and a couple drills with balls. Like, they were doing some stuff after the combine had ended. All the GMs and coaches had checked out. And mind you, this is Sunday night where all these guys are racing to get to the airport to get back on planes and get back to whatever, city their teams flew out from. He stayed on the field for a good hour and a half after that. And was literally the last player off of the field when there was, it was Brad, Rob Shue, and Jason and I pretty much in the stands watching. And this guy was out there working when nobody was watching. And to me, when you're able to talk it and walk it, and you have that ability on tape, I'm going to buy into that. I like football guys. I like players that are, hey, I want to be great. I'm here to be great. And that's the vibe I got from him. So he's the person I keep coming back to. Nick Cross out of Maryland's another guy I really like. I don't know where he's going to end up going. Kirby Joseph's another name to watch. There's some good safeties in this class. So I don't think it's like a far-fetched thing to think maybe they could get that guy at 93, but their best bet is bringing back Jaquiski Tartt, and for whatever reason, it hasn't happened yet, and I'm not counting on it happening. I think that solves a lot of issues that they currently have with that spot being vacant. But again, I'm not the one making that decision. If it was my football team, he would have been signed 10 days ago. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think that's definitely something to watch. It's interesting. This one, no explanation, just a number, Brad. Right now, what's the number? Rapid fire, go.
2.
That's what I was going to say too. I think 2 is a pretty safe bet. It might even be 1, to be honest. I'd be shocked if it was 3, but I think 2 is kind of like the sweet spot where I would land at as well.
I like the idea of getting a center guard and a tackle. If you can get me a guy, like typically center and guards are pretty interchangeable. If you play center, you can typically play both guard spots. It's a little bit different when you move from guard to center, but and you get me a tackle. There's some good depth at tackle here, so you just grab me one of those guys, and we see how it works out. But again, they might not. Colton McKivitz, Justin School, 2 backup tackles. You have Jalen Moore. I wouldn't be shocked if they said we're just going to go potentially grab a center or a guard, or both center and guard, 2 center guards. So we'll see.
So this one's interesting because I have some thoughts on the running back room, and I've thought that there was a need to supplement it a little bit. I first of all loved the Jeff Wilson signing, bringing him back. Jeff Wilson's one of my favorite players to cover on this team. Just the way he plays the sport of football.
He's so underrated, dude.
It's just
unbelievable.
He's a dog, dude. There's no other way to put it. He's just a guy that goes out there, handles his business, is very efficient when he gets touches and is healthy. And I think that's the biggest misconception right now is we didn't see him when he was fully healthy this past year. People are like, well, how come he wasn't getting touches? I personally don't think he ever was quite right coming back. And I think that's why we saw such a heavy dose of Elijah Mitchell. But again, Elijah Mitchell's a guy you took in the 6th round that you got good production from, that you've seen can handle a pretty substantial workload. I don't think that you can replicate that success necessarily, just expecting him to carry the ball 20 times a game again and average 4.7, I think was what he averaged his yards per carry. But starting with that 2-headed monster of Mitchell and Wilson, I think that they still have room to either draft or add in free agency a guy that's maybe a little bit more of a 3rd down back, really good in pass protection, great at running routes. I do think Jeff Wilson can do that as well. But, Juszczyk always has to be accounted to these discussions too, based on the way they use him. He's a fullback, I know, but he's also like this offensive weapon, and they do utilize him very creatively. So I think he factors in. So you have 3 guys for me that are automatic locks. Trey Sermon's kind of the big question mark because I'm not a fan of trading up for a running back in any round. Maybe if it's like the 7th round and you're moving up a few picks, like sure, dude. But to move up in the top 100 to take a running back and then they don't see the field, it's going to invite warranted concern where people are like, okay, well, what, you saw something in this guy that made you want to jump up picks and give up picks to move up in when there were plenty of other great players on the board still. And this is what you're left with. I haven't seen enough to have a strong opinion either way. I wish I could give more insight. I just am kind of the mindset where he has to come in and have a really strong mini camp and a really strong training camp if he's going to have a role on this team. Because I think Kyle made it very clear. Like, I don't care where I drafted you. I don't care what capital we invested in you. If I don't think you're good enough to be on that field, or for whatever reason I don't want you on that field, you're not going on that field. And that's why we saw Elijah Mitchell carry the ball a bunch. So how I'm feeling now is good. I think they have a good foundation, but I definitely think they could add to it. And I think there's some guys in the draft who would be really good. I think that there are some options out there in free agency still that would be pretty good. But I'm much more content now than I would have been 2 days ago before they brought Jeff Wilson back. I think that was a huge step in the right direction.
Absolutely. And Jeff Wilson, I mean, right now he's probably got the best vision on the team. And I don't think he was healthy last year. And I think that's what he was dealing with. He was trying to get back from the meniscus that happened in OTAs. And it was a process of just getting him onto the field. But to your point, there's a lot of good running backs in this class. So I agree. I think they still go to the well there. I like a guy like Zonovan Knight. James Cook is a fun one. But that's my guy right there, Rachaad White. You get me Rachaad White. Again, we were standing right there, and your guy, one of your best buddies in all of the land now, Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. Rachaad, he waved Rachaad over, and I could hear them talking, and I didn't like the way they were talking because it seemed like they were very interested in one another. And I'm like, Rashaad's my guy. You do not go to the Chiefs. So I think he's going to be a good back. He's got good size, great vision, patient runner, great for the zone. But there's going to be a lot of guys like that. And you're going to be able to find them in the 4th, 5th, 6th round again. So I would like to see them go back to the well, but in the 4th, 5th, 6th round.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I appreciate that because I'm not going to lie. It was very cool getting to bond and speak with Eric Bieniemy. He's a very cool guy. I know a lot of Niners fans are like, I don't care. Chiefs offensive coordinator,
Right.
heartbroken in the Super Bowl,
Last
don't
thing
want to
they
hear
want
it.
to hear.
He actually had Kyle Shanahan as a graduate assistant under him at UCLA, which is pretty cool. We talked about that a little bit, and it was pretty cool. Him and Kyle still talk, pretty regularly. They're still good friends. Like, I thought that was pretty cool because I'm like, man, you know how much I would, give to be a fly on the wall in the room listening to Kyle and Eric break down offensive tape and, hit the whiteboard and draw stuff. Like, that'd be so cool to see those guys cook in the same room together. So, yeah, I'm on the same thing. I know we're talking football, but St. Peter's won, and that's obviously in my opinion, the biggest Cinderella story of the tournament. So,
Bro, I've been
they
so
didn't win
wrapped.
yet. They're close. Sorry.
I've been so wrapped up in this quarterback situation that I completely forgot to do a roster. Like I was like, oh, it's March. Like I was like, oh, I think one of the first upsets that happened on one of the opening days was like I didn't even know. Like I'm like, oh wow, I totally failed. Didn't even get a bracket out.
Yeah, and see, that's my whole thing. It's like I'm never gonna hey, if you enjoy doing brackets, if you enjoy doing anything, as long as it's not harming other people or annoying me, I don't care. Like, please be happy. But I will never do brackets because I'm never gonna have one that's perfect. I am well aware of that, and I'm just gonna sit there and waste time filling it out, only to have it destroyed within the first day or two of the tournament. So, shout out to anybody who is doing brackets. I salute you. Good for you. But I would much rather sit here and speculate on what free agents are coming to the 49ers, because I feel like then I have a better chance of guessing those things than I do guessing who's going to win the NCAA tournament.
I won my first ever bracket. But it's been downhill ever since that.
Yeah, see, Brad's out here pulling bigger strings now. He's got too much going on. He graduated to the
I graduated from the bracket, unfortunately. Hopefully I get one next year. We talked about doing a group bracket or something, having some fun with it. Who knows? I wouldn't mind doing it again though.
This one is an interesting one because he looked pretty good running around too. Pierre Strong, that is. I don't know if you have any thoughts watching from when we were there, but he's definitely a guy I could see in that, one cut mold where you get him a nice hole. Like, this is the thing. The 49ers offensive line it's always Bobby Turner, who's great at what he does. It's always Kyle Shanahan, and it's always whatever running back's carrying the ball. Never do we ever hear big narratives get driven about how these 49ers offensive linemen are creating holes that you could drive a Cadillac through. I just think that that's something that gets so swept under the rug, dude. And it's just
the holes are this big. That's why you have to have a running back that has vision. If they don't have it, you're screwed, because it's all based on setting up your own blocks and cutting off them. That's why Raheem Mostert was so good in this scheme. He was so good at threatening outside speed, getting everyone to flow to the outside, shift it down and cut back to the inside, hit the hole as it's opening. There's a timing to it. And Elijah Mitchell got really, really good at it towards the end of the year. It's one of the things that Jeff Wilson's really good at. But yeah, dude, the holes for this offensive line, again, they were rated really well last year, and they produced quite well. But the holes that exist, you're anticipating the holes. You're waiting for them to open. And you're timing the opening. It's not like they're just open and you're like, oh, I'm gonna walk through that one. It's very difficult to be a running back in this scheme.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing that gets me is a lot of the success does really come from there's been plenty of guys in this scheme who I think are fine NFL players, but I also think that a lot of the credit doesn't get given to the offensive line. And I think, again, hey, 49ers fans, especially everybody in this chat right now, you're all brilliant football minds that are passionate about the sport, but the common fan doesn't really care to hear about offensive line talk, but it's so important. And I get it. It's not, it's not sexy, scoring touchdowns and running for thousands of yards and all that. But dude, without the trenches, there's nothing. It's all about who said that? Marcus Spears. It's all about the trenches. It really is.
There's
at the end of the
cool
day.
Quarterback plays. There's no cool running plays.
None of it.
There's
Without
no cool
it,
wide receivers doing anything.
Yeah.
You can't block at the point of attack. You're screwed.
Those guys never get the love they deserve. And yeah, we do have to touch on before we get out of here. Brad, if you guys haven't seen, Brad had an exclusive interview with Javon Kinlaw that was fantastic. I'm seeing it all over the place. I hear it's getting written about at big outlets. It's getting shared all over the place. So, if his brand wasn't big enough as is, he's now out here interviewing literal Goliaths in just I think, a tremendous football player in Javon Kinlaw. I think a lot of people are going to eat crow. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Like, was there anything cool from that interview that you took away that you're like, because I think we've both been Javon Kinlaw guys for a while, but is there anything you took away where you're like, all right, like I'm going into this year feeling pretty good about Javon, number 99 over there in the middle of nose tackle?
The biggest thing, obviously the health and the way he talked about his health. I was like, oh, like you got a new leg, like you're doing things you've never done before. Like clearly he's been dealing with the knee injury for lingering for a long time. And based on what we've heard, they went in, this came out from the actual surgery and surgeons themselves. They found out there was an issue that they weren't addressing properly, and they went in and then they fixed it. And now he's saying like he feels like a new person. The biggest thing for me, and I think my takeaway, is going to be his maturity. I think, understanding his story, understanding being the high school dropout, being the community college kid. I was a community college kid. I played with a lot of raw, talented players, but they're playing because they're raw and talented, and not because they're in the film room. They're like understanding these concepts and those kinds of things. I think that's where he's at in his maturation. He's understanding the preparation. He's understanding how to be an NFL player. And at the age of 24, I'm really excited about that because I talk about it all the time. Debo was drafted at 24 years old. Kittle was drafted at 24 years old. This guy has taken some time, but he still has a little bit of wiggle room to get up to speed. And I think that was one of the cool things to like pick his brain about, is like, he's like, yeah, I'm starting to get it now. Like I'm starting to understand like what pro football is versus just being 6'5" behemoth barbarian, just wrecking shop because he's huge. We understand that doesn't work in the NFL.
How long do you think you could hold off Javon Kinlaw if he's bull rushing you right now? You guys go head up Oklahoma drill style.
Right now,
how long are you holding him off for?
Dude is folding me in 0.3 seconds. I got a back of an 80-year-old. If I were to go one-on-one, I might be able to get a nice kick step in, look real nice, like right out the gate. But the second contact is created, dude's folding me like a chair. I'm just going down. Like, no way. Maybe in my prime, I could have got him for a second or two, but no way. He would destroy me right now.
Oh man. So first of all, thank you to everybody who's watching right now. I really appreciate it. I can't thank Brad enough for coming and helping me out too. I unfortunately, I got to get it out the mud a little bit and hit those viewership hours and the subscriptions before I can super chat. But I am thrilled, Hendrix, that you cashed in betting on a Cinderella in March Madness, because there is no better feeling. I don't as much as I used to, but I still, sometimes I fire up that sports betting app from time to time. I dabble in it from time to time, and there's nothing better than winning on a Cinderella. And betting in March is it's different, dude. So I'm stoked. Go out, buy yourself a nice dinner, treat yourself to something nice. I appreciate you considering me, but I want you to spend that bread on yourself. Maybe double down on them getting to the Final Four. I don't know, but I'm stoked for you. And, again, I hate like plugging my own stuff or like talking about it, but the more you guys do help, if you can tell people who are into this stuff, if they want to watch, like if you direct people to the channel, like the videos, subscribe, it really would go a long way for me. And I really do appreciate it. This wouldn't be possible without everybody who's watching right now. And I've really felt the love. This is only the second video I've put out, and I've gotten a tremendous amount of support for how little I've actually done doing this so far. So it doesn't go unnoticed. I try to get to as many of the chats and stuff that I can in here too. So if you guys do have questions that I miss, my @'s right here. If you guys have Twitter, you could always DM me, and I will try my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Admittedly, I don't have the greatest attention span at times, so I might forget. But I will eventually come back, even if it's a week later and the player you're asking about is
probably going to get a response from Jordan much sooner than you would.
Much sooner than Brad. Brad is the Jimmy Garoppolo of 49ers content creator. I'm George Kittle, and he's Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'll text him and be just eagerly awaiting a text back.
Bro, we have people sending me super chats on live, so I read their message. They're like, read my message right now. They send me a super chat. I'm like, this is honestly the best way to get me to read your message. You put me on blast on super chat, and I'm like, all right, I got to do it. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. But if you reach out to Jordan, you probably have a much better chance against some feedback than me.
Let me throw out real quick too, because I have a funny story about that. Hendricks, for whatever my advice may be worth, take half of it and bet the money line next game, so that whatever happens in that Elite Eight game, you're still coming away with something. That's always what I try to do. I always try to take away, so I at least don't come to this where I'm like riding this hot streak, and then I'm like, okay, well, I had X amount of money, I kept doubling down, ended up losing. Take a bit of it, put it aside, and then just bet the money line and let it ride. And then no matter what happens, you're still coming out on top. So for whatever it's worth, that's just how I approach things. And I know
It sounds like
sometimes
you've dabbled quite a bit there, Jordan.
I've been around, all right. A little bit, and that's much funner than losing all the money you just won, even if it's all house money that you're playing with. So just throwing that out there. But yeah, so we were in Indianapolis, and for those of you that didn't see or didn't know, so Jason and I got there with Rob Shue on like a Tuesday, I think, and Brad flew in the next day. And we're waiting for Brad at Yard House in downtown Indianapolis, and he's doing a live with you guys, and he's locked in with his hundreds of thousands of viewers watching. And Jason is literally super chatting Brad on his YouTube channel to be like, get off of this live and come meet the boys at Yard House. What are you doing? And I thought it was so funny that like after 3 or 4 of them, Brad was like, all right, like I got to wrap this up. It's time to go, because Jason just kept super chatting him. So he's not lying about that. There's times where literally like this man is, and it's only because he's so locked in to giving you guys content. That's why he's so like, I'm telling you, watching this guy work was like watching, I'm blanking on that name. There was this show on Discovery Channel, but was it Modern Marvels? Like it was like watching Modern Marvels. Yeah, that's what it was like watching Brad Graham do content, because this man has 2 phones at the same time. He's on a laptop making graphics, posting. Like, dude, it's incredible. So if you guys, I doubt anybody here is following my stuff and not following Brad's, but definitely the @ is right there. That Brad's on Instagram. He's a celebrity there. He's on Twitter. He's a celebrity there. He's his content's awesome. So you definitely want to follow him. And then again, I know I said I wanted to keep this wrapped up. So unless there's any burning things you guys have, I'll give you, a second to get it together if you have any questions that you wanted to ask before. But again, I don't want to keep Brad too long. So I'll
say this. Make sure that every time you hop into one of Jordan's live, the first thing you do is you smash that like button. Just first thing. It needs to be like muscle memory. Just boop. Just every time you hop in, smash it, get that like up, because we want to get this boy to the moon. I'm very excited for Jordan's channel. I call him GM Jordan for a reason. I think the sky's the limit for this man. So I'm excited to see him branch out and take this next step into kind of creating his own path. And I think that's one of the coolest things that we can do in today's world, is we can create our own path with these types of platforms. So just make sure you keep supporting the boy, smashing that like button, and giving this guy all the love.
I appreciate it, dude, so much. This has been so fun for me, and this is another thing I have to touch on. Real men stay up late at night and think about Jim Harbaugh. That's going to be the motto of this channel. If you don't do that, I respect that. It's totally fine. But if you do, just know you're not alone, and there's a support group of a lot of us that look back on those Harbaugh years. And we, sometimes it's 2:30 in the morning. I go to get some water in my kitchen, and I'm like, damn, what's Jim Harbaugh doing right now? What's Jimmy H doing? So just know, don't let anybody ever question. And it's not just for men too. Don't let anybody question your humanity. If you spend late nights thinking about Jim Harbaugh, you are not alone. You are loved and you are understood. So just know that.
I spend my late nights thinking about Brian Burns, so you guys are in a little bit better shape than I
am. Dawson had a question real quick. I think this is a better question for you really quick, Brad, because I know Dawson does have a channel. And he does great stuff too, guys. So definitely check his stuff out. But he was asking, what do you look for to see if what's the secret sauce to Brad Graham cooking up these delicious YouTube videos?
What do you look for to see if a vid does well in your opinion? There's so many factors. I guess it depends. It kind of depends on that's a loaded question. What type of are you looking for engagement? Are you looking for viral? Are you looking for quality? I think there's so many different ways to go about content and making a really good video. You can do it in so many different ways. So I think it's about what is true to you and like what kind of content you're trying to do, and then fitting it within those situations, because you can grab something from a player and that could go viral. You can catch something here and that could go viral. You can edit two things together and that can, so it's just, I think timing, one, two, just understanding your audience. If you understand your audience and what type of content they're looking for, that's the half the battle, is just trying to get something in front of your people that they want to engage with, and that's the name of the game.
All right, real quick before we wrap this up, Brad, favorite Jim Harbaugh moment off the dome right now? What is it?
The slap heard around the world with Jim Schwartz. Get versus Detroit. The game's over. You get Harbaugh coming across the field. The nice little swift slap to the back. Schwartz wasn't having it. All hell broke loose. I love that moment. That was so much fun. That was the first thing that popped into my head.
So mine is when he effectively bullied replacement refs into giving him an extra timeout. If you guys remember, I forget, it was early in the 2012 season. You don't remember? Oh, dude, against Minnesota, they like were out of timeouts and they kept challenging stuff when they were out of challenges too. And Harbaugh basically just like went over to the ref and was like, give me the challenge, like give me the timeout, like, and they ended up doing it. So
you're tracking this wrong.
Yeah, he basically bullied replacement refs into giving him an extra challenge and an extra timeout. I think they lost the challenge. They lost the game to Minnesota. It was a terrible Vikings team, which is crazy because that's the year the Niners went to the Super Bowl. But I just thought that to me, it was like such a Jim Harbaugh thing to do, that's like funny. Bully a replacement ref into giving an extra timeout. So I think unless there's anything else anybody else wants to ask real quick, I think it's a good spot to segue out of here because Brad has things to do and I am very gracious for his time and I don't want to keep him too much longer. So unless there's anything else that anybody wants to talk about, I think we could go ahead and put a bow on it. This is so weird because usually Brad's the guy. Oh, real quick. Jesus, thank you for coming by. Again, if you guys don't know, Jesus was the 3rd subscriber to my channel and we all know who got picked at number 3 by the 49ers. So Jesus is effectively the Trey Lance of Jordan Elliott sports. So the weight of this channel is kind of on Jesus' shoulder. Like, I know everybody thinks it's me because it's my name and I'm doing this. I have no pressure here. I'm not the guy that got picked at 3. It was Jesus. So I'm just throwing it out there. I believe in him. I think he has all the traits. He has all the intangibles. He's who you look for to be a beacon of your franchise and really represent the brand. But he's got a lot of pressure on him. So I'm just saying, take it easy. The expectations are there. We need to give him a comfortable environment where he can thrive and be that superstar all pro we know he can be.
We're really counting on you, Jesus, to be that dual threat, to be able to attack it in multiple different ways and just really be able to mature at a very rapid pace. So no pressure, Jesus. No pressure at all, my guy.
Oh man. I mean, if Jimmy Garoppolo is tuned into my channel, I have to think he's doing it, like, no offense to anybody else in the chat, like, Jimmy's probably just doing it at a level that's, like, hard to match. Like, and that's no disrespect to anybody else. He just has that, like, aura about him. So it couldn't hurt.
You've seen that chin line? That's what it is. He's got QB face. The QB face is doing wonders for him.
It couldn't hurt, man. But yeah, we'll get into some more stuff. I'll hopefully have Brad back again soon. I don't know. Real quick. Yes, Chardal, they were 3 first-round picks. It was a heavy investment. We had to make it. When you see talent like that, you can't pass it up, and you need to just go all in. So,
oh wow, look at Itchy trying to say Solomon Thomas. No, he's not our Solomon Thomas. He is our Trey Lance. Don't put that evil on Jesus.
Oh man, come on, man. So normally this is when Brad asks me where people can find me. If you guys again are following me, you're probably already following Brad, but on the off chance you stumble across this and don't know, Brad, where can these fine people find your stuff other than everywhere?
I'm with you. I still find it weird to like plug my own stuff, but you find me at the SF Niners. Pretty much any platform you like. Shout out Jesus, dude. I love that he's over here, man, supporting you. Shout out all the SDS in here supporting our guy Jordan. I love it, man. You guys follow me, but we're here about Jordan, so I'm really excited. Make sure you're tapping in with this guy again. You better be liking that I'm watching in these streets. Even if I'm not on the live, I'm gonna be in there like, you better like this video. y'all better like this video. And we got some real ones in here who do a really good job of helping getting those likes up. So hopefully we can do the same for you, Jordan. Really excited about the growth of your channel. How many subs do you have already?
I think when I checked last, it was like 265, something like that.
That's fire.
Yeah, it's a good start, man. Let me see. I can update it real quick. I'm at 266 right now. So I appreciate all 266 of you. So
I mean, it's a great start. And as you know, Jordan's going to keep rolling. He's going to keep putting out content. And, you know, it's a process. We talked about it on our channel. You want to get on the ground floor with my guy. So make sure you keep subbing, keep liking, engaging, and to the moon for the boy. Excited.
Yeah, I appreciate, like I said, anything. If you have friends who are 49ers fans or anything, if they might be interested in it, even if they're going to watch it for 10 minutes and be like, God, this guy's an idiot. Like, it helps me out in the end. So I'm extremely appreciative of any assistance.
Has anyone ever said that to you, Jordan?
Plenty of times, dude. I'm pretty
sure
my
girlfriend me coming into your mentions when you were being sarcastic on.
We're talking strictly football takes, because I was gonna say I'm pretty sure my girlfriend called me an idiot this morning, but I don't know if that counts.
Strictly like real football takes, like not Jordan trying to troll the timeline.
See, that's the thing, is that like nobody ever wants to victory lap the stuff that I get right, but if I get things wrong, you better believe. So this is the funniest thing, right? Is like I try to be pretty humble. I try to be very understanding that I'm not going to get everything right, and it's so funny when people go to like, what do you have to say about this? You got this wrong, and you just go like, yeah, man, I missed on that. Like I got it wrong, and not even that. They kind of go to a point where they're like, well, like, damn, I can't just like keep berating this guy. He like,
all right, they're trying to dunk on you, and you're like, you dunk on yourself. You're like,
you dunk on yourself, and you're like,
dunk on myself.
Yeah, it takes all the power out of their hands, and it's so funny. So that's another thing for anybody that's like doing this, or even if you just have takes on Twitter. Just remember, people always want to celebrate your pitfalls and all the takes you get wrong. And every one of us gets takes wrong. Dude, I wanted to draft Quinnen Williams over Nick Bosa. I say that with my entire chest because I felt it at the time and I really believed it. Was that probably wrong? Yeah, I think it's pretty fair to say that was probably wrong and a misstep by me. But all the things I got right, people don't go around and talk about the things I got right. People don't talk about how I was talking about how Azeez Al-Shaair was one of the best players on that defense. Everybody loves Azeez Al-Shaair now. You guys should have seen my mentions week 3 of last season when I was saying that. So
you were getting crazy on the
I was taking grenades, man. I was in the trenches taking grenades.
You were invoking Fred Warner. You were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but it's not like you were wrong.
Hey, man, there were weeks where Azeez Al-Shaair looked like the best linebacker on the field. And to do that playing next to an all-pro is not an indictment on Fred Warner. It's uplifting about Azeez Al-Shaair, who I think is a fantastic player. And thankfully, the 49ers don't need to worry about that for another year in terms of extending him, keeping him, and all of that. Because, man, I'm telling you, you get a team like the Seahawks sniffing around. They see this talent. They're like coming in with all this cap space. It worries me, man. If I have to see Azeez Al-Shaair running around in that like fluorescent green and blue Seahawks colors, I might hurt the soul a little bit. But
yeah, I don't want to see that. Don't want to see that at all.
I could talk about Azeez Al-Shaair for hours. Maybe we'll do another live strictly devoted to Azeez Al-Shaair. Just an Azeez live,
hour and a half.
Well, and we'll put in Azeez Ojulari too. We'll just have an Azeez with like 7 Z's at the end. We'll have just an Azeez and Azeez. Yeah, we'll have like a live,
literally
just that. But I love that. I'm going to wrap this up because, again, Brad's too nice to tell me, hey, dude, you're keeping me. I need to go. So I want to get him out of here before he starts resenting me deep down. So
no, it's payback for me keeping you on the lives for 2 hours. It's par for the course, man.
Anytime. And I'm gonna try to do more videos, guys. So if you are looking for just quick stuff, like if like something happens or we hear a rumor about Jimmy, even if it's like a 5-minute, like I'm gonna try to pre-record some stuff and put it out too. So any of that, I'll try to update it through my Twitter. I'm still new to YouTube. I'm pretty good on the Bird app, but I still am finding my way on YouTube. So if you follow me there, I'll be able to direct a lot of my stuff to here and while I find my bearings. But I'm going to go ahead and wish you all a fantastic night and a good weekend. If I don't do a live between now and then, barring something big happening, I don't know that I will. So thank you for everybody who came and watched. Again, have a fantastic Friday night. I hope everything that you strive for this weekend happens, whether it's just doing something in your personal life or the 49ers making a big splash signing. Positive,
Brian
man.
Burns?
It's Brian Burt. Let's talk it into existence, man. This channel is all about positivity. Your negativity will be rejected with the swiftness. So we are here to lift one another up. And I want to see that same love that you guys show me and Brad. show each other and show yourselves because you deserve it. Brad, is there
Amen,
anything
brother.
else you want to say as we get out of
No,
here?
you said it perfect. I hope we're celebrating Brian Burns this weekend. Probably not, but that's my hope. I'm going to keep speaking into existence. I don't care. It's going to happen. But thank you for having me, Jordan. It's been a blast. Shout out everyone. Vibing. It was a good time.
All right, I'm gonna wrap this up, and soon, hopefully, I'll have like a cool like catchphrase, like a like a Ron Burgundy-esque line that I can throw at you guys as like maybe I'll do finger guns. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But for now, I have nothing, so I'm just gonna say good night. Have a good weekend.
Stay classy,
and thank you guys.
guys.
Stay classy, 49ers fans. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
Oh my goodness.